Hello, fellow founders. I'm Wesley Fogel, and the next of my top 10 ways for you to raise the first £150,000 for your startup are grants. Now, grant funding covers a wide range of areas, focusing on innovation and ways to address all aspects of the UK government's industrial policy. So if you believe your venture will in any way improve how the economy functions through greater productivity, improving health, climate change, across a range of industries, then government funding is there for you. Some of the biggest grant funding organisations in the UK are UK Research and Innovation, UKRI, which awarded a whopping £3.1 billion in grants between just 2020 to 2021 alone. Wellcome Trust spent £1.2 billion on charitable activities to improve health through science, as well as some sector-specific funding bodies such as the National Institute for Health Research, NIHR, which made £370 million in new funding available through their research programs over the same period. Now, grants are made available to early-stage startups to de-risk projects that otherwise would not be going ahead. So ironically, the greater your dependency on this funding, the stronger you will be as a grant applicant. So your biggest weakness now becomes your strength, giving you access to huge pots of capital. Typically, startups are limited to investors who can write relatively small individual checks. In the case of government grants, you can apply for anywhere in the region of up to £1 million of funding from just a single source. However, there are a few important things you should consider to inform the level of funding that you're looking to raise through grants. First, you will often need to match some part of the funds raised with private investment, which limits the total overall size of the grant that you can seek. Secondly, the success rate for grant applications is typically 5 to 10%, given this is a very competitive space. And thirdly, the smaller the amount of grant funding that you're seeking, the lower the overall risk that your proposal will have, and the greater that your chances of success will be. So the less you ask for, the better, which returns to the bootstrapping principle of how much you can do with the least amount. If you're able to demonstrate to grant funding bodies that you can provide a positive return on investment from a £50,000 grant, this will significantly increase your chances of winning a £500,000 grant, which then in turn makes you far more likely to win a grant of £5 million and so on. Now, a top tip from me is that grant bodies prefer to see startups that will need to further grant fund in future, as to be seen fostering continued innovation, partnerships, and job creation. So play this to your advantage by starting small and building to ever larger projects. Remember that investors will want to see you exploring all options for grant funding, but will equally not expect the company to continue to run on grants, as these will typically only be available at pre-revenue stage, and that's somewhere that you'll ideally not stay for very long. Always look out for new grant funding options, sign up for newsletters, listen out for webinars, and go to networking events where you'll learn about the latest grants as they're being announced, and they're continuously being announced throughout the year. Finally, given the low success rate for most grant applications, you will need to consider working with a good grant writer. And don't just search on Google. Get recommendations through your trusted network. It's another reason to go to networking events to stay in touch with other startup founders. Where possible, you'll want to structure a no-win, no-fee arrangement with your writer. You might even want to consider offering equity in your business if you plan to work on future applications together. The most successful grant writers will expect some upfront cash payment with a percentage of the winnings. However, you should always be willing to negotiate because you have the leverage. Always remember that any service provider needs a continuous stream of business, and if you bring a strong grant application proposal, then it's a win-win. If your grant writer doesn't consider your proposal a strong one, then you might need to rethink the application. Now, you can sign up to my full fundraising course at wesleyfogel.com, and I look forward to sharing my next top tip.